Hi everyone, this is Grace and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to learn how to decorate this fall in a cup set. So first up is this maple leaf. This is a somewhat new to me technique and boy am I obsessed. So first up is I am outlining and flooding all with the same consistency, and that I think is pretty important for this kind of technique. I'm doing a single consistency outline and flood, so this is a bit on the thicker side. What's important here is you can see I'm not flooding all the way to the edge. That is really important because with this technique, you're going to smush the icing a little bit and you want to give yourself some grace so there's some room for it to smush and not fall over the edge. That said, if it does fall over the edge, don't panic. I think that's one of the beauties of this technique. So here I am. I just want to add some pizzazz to the wet on wet. So I am taking a scribe and first I'm pulling out and then next I'm going to pull in. And I think it's important to do it this order, especially when you're doing a single consistency wet on wet, because the pulling in encourages the icing to come to the center of the cookie instead of when you're pulling it out, you're encouraging the icing to go out. And since you're going to be smushing it anyway, let's help yourself and bring that icing towards the center of the cookie. So this is parchment paper. I have crinkled it twice. I smush it one way, then I open it and I turn it around and I crinkle it the other way just to get some good options on my crinkle. And here I am just lightly tapping it. I want to make sure that I'm tapping all of the edges to get the shape of the cookie, not pressing too hard. And then I let this dry overnight and I peel it off. It's okay if there's some spots you miss. You can see there are little bubbles and I actually kind of like that. So that is the maple leaf, and up next we have this simple pumpkin. Again, I'm doing a single consistency outline and flood. This is probably my favorite way to do a pumpkin, especially a small pumpkin, doing more sections. So this will have 5 sections. And what I'm doing here is flooding in sections. And that means I'm flooding alternate sections. I will allow those to crust and then I flood the alternating sections. And this gives the dimension and the definition in between the sections instead of having them just flood together. I use a dehydrator, so I put mine in the dehydrator for about 15 minutes. If you're using a fan, could be closer to maybe 15 to 30 minutes. I need to use a scribe here because the icing is a little bit on the thicker side, just to help it kind of settle out, make sure I'm not leaving any peaks from that scribe. So I let that crust. You can see it's still kind of shiny, which means that it has just barely crusted over enough for me to go on to this next section. And here I'm really tempting fate with how much icing I am applying. And in fact, this one might have, almost fallen over the edge, but it's okay. It's okay. Here I am. Let's see, I had an air bubble in there, so I just need to use my scribe to poke that out. And again, this is a thick flood that I'm using for the stem, and that is the simple pumpkin. And last but not least is the mug. So continuing on my theme of a single consistency outline and flood, I've really mastered and gotten comfortable with the consistency and the amount of pressure and the size of the tip needed to do a larger cookie like this in a single consistency outline and flood. It just takes a lot of practice, failing, trying again, taking notes of what works and what doesn't work, and getting to the point where you can do something like this. No scribe, not a perfect flood on the first try, and this did not spill over the edge, which is amazing. Here I am going to pipe these smaller details, and this is actually a soft peak piping consistency. And the reason I'm using a piping consistency is because this is a smaller space, and this is going to have a more pronounced crater the thinner the icing. So that the thickest icing possible is going to give me the most dimension and poof on these smaller areas. I will also put this in the dehydrator as soon as I'm done with these details to allow it to crust as soon as possible. So this again, this is a soft peak piping consistency. This is different than what I used to flood the main part of the mug. And I'm doing a bit of pressure piping here, which means that I'm applying a lot of pressure and using the tip of my bag to help it kind of jiggle into place. And I will pull out my scribe. When I'm doing this kind of piping, I like to use the tip of the bag as much as possible instead of using a scribe. I find it gets a better surface when using the tip of the bag as you're piping instead of waiting to come in with a scribe after. So I've let that crust, and I'm moving on to do the next part of the cinnamon sticks. Again, the same soft peak piping consistency. Soft peak means that if you hold the spoon upright, the icing will just fall over. Well, not just, it will completely fall over, but it still maintains the integrity of the shape. A medium peak just falls over. Soft peak totally falls over. This icing here, this white, is a medium peak. It needs to be a little bit thicker so it can hold its shape easier. And here I am painting with pure gel food coloring in chocolate brown. Oh hey, and it looks like I forgot to film the sprinkles, but I think you know how to apply sprinkles. This last final step on this cookie is to pipe the lettering. I'm using a projector. I will put the projector details in the description of the video. This lettering came with the cutter. It was designed to be on this cutter, and by purchasing the cutter, I can use the custom lettering here. This is by Kaleidacuts. I'm using more like a medium peak for this, but I really wish I had used closer to my typical soft peak, which is what I use for writing, but it's just how it happened, and I was impatient and just wanted to finish piping. So it worked out. It was fine, but you live, you learn. Next time, soft peak for me. So this is the mug, the final cookie in this set, fall in a cup. I hope y'all enjoy making this yourself, and happy fall.